Welcome to the deep dive. So today our mission is to unpack a text that, honestly, it claims everything you have ever been taught about modern dating is just a complete lie.
Yeah, a total fabrication.
Right. We're looking at this highly provocative, intensely debated book. It's called Female Nature by Jesse Tyler. And we've got his writings, his core arguments, a whole stack of notes here.
A very big stack.
Yeah, exactly. And our goal today is to really extract the architecture of his worldview, because he claims that he has exposed these very uncomfortable, unspoken truths about how women actually think, how they operate, and how they date.
Right, he's essentially taking every single piece of traditional dating advice and just flipping it entirely on its head.
Exactly. But before we really get into the weeds of this, we need to set some ground rules for how we're going to navigate this conversation today.
Yeah, that is absolutely crucial. Look, this book takes a very hardline, deeply polarizing stance on intersexual dynamics.
Extremely polarizing.
Right. So our job today isn't to tell you if the author is right or wrong. We are not taking a side in any of the broader cultural gender wars. That's not the point.
No, not at all.
Our mission is just to map out his exact arguments so you can understand this specific framework. We're just acting as your guides to the material, you know. We're conveying the ideas exactly as they were presented in the original text without endorsing them.
I think that's the perfect lens for us to use, because to even begin to understand Tyler's framework, you first have to look at the narrative that, honestly, most of us have been fed since birth.
The standard script.
Exactly, the standard movie script. Think about almost any piece of modern media or like any romantic comedy you have ever absorbed.
Oh yeah, they all follow the exact same formula.
They do. You get handed this very specific script. You see the guy, he's maybe a little awkward, but he is just relentlessly devoted.
He's the nice guy.
Right. He brings the flowers, he writes the long, thoughtful text messages. He basically makes the woman the absolute center of his universe.
And then the music swells.
Yeah. Yeah. The music swells. They kiss in the pouring rain. And his undeniable, unconditional care just wins her heart. It's pitched as the ultimate triumph of the nice guy who just tried hard enough.
It is, it's an incredibly comforting narrative. I mean,
Yeah.
we inherently like the idea of a meritocracy in love.
A meritocracy. I like that word for it.
Yeah, it's this concept that putting in the most effort, being the most transparent with your feelings, and being the most reliable will somehow yield the best emotional return. It just feels fair.
It does feel fair, but the author argues that when men take that exact movie script and step into the actual real-world modern dating landscape.
Reality just hits them in the face like a ton of bricks.
Exactly. They follow that script to the exact letter. They're the perfect quote-unquote good guy. And instead of getting that movie ending, they find themselves deeply frustrated.
They get left on read.
Left on read, completely ignored, or just permanently stuck in the friend zone. And Tyler says men are trained from birth to behave this way, and it is the exact reason they are suffering in silence, just feeling utterly powerless.
Well, the author identifies the root of this failure by pointing out what he calls a fundamental illusion that men operate under.
Which is what, exactly?
Men essentially believe that if they just show enough interest and validation, a woman will naturally reciprocate. They assume it's this one-to-one transfer of energy.
Right. I put in good, I get back good.
Exactly. But Tyler asserts that men and women navigate the world from completely different psychological and biological starting points.
I was actually trying to wrap my head around how he describes this fundamental disconnect, and I came up with an analogy that might help.
Oh, let's hear it.
Okay, so imagine you have this incredibly powerful, highly structured piece of enterprise business software. It is designed for pure logic. You put in a direct input, you get a clear, measurable output.
Okay, makes sense.
Now imagine trying to run that complex business software on a gaming console.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Right. It doesn't matter how good the software is. The hardware of the console is just completely incompatible with the code. It is going to crash every single time.
That's a great way to put it. And to take your software analogy a step further, the author argues that a man's logical brain is his greatest asset in almost every other area of his life.
Right. Like at work.
Exactly. Diligence, persistence, dedication, expecting a return on investment. Those are the exact traits that build wealth, forge successful careers, and build physical fitness.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But applying that exact same business mindset to a romantic dynamic with a woman is, according to the book, actively anti-seductive.
Because in business, you expect a return on investment. If I invest all this time, all this validation, all this careful attention into a woman, My logical male brain expects a return.
You expect her appreciation, her loyalty, her attraction.
Exactly. I bought the dinner, I listened to her complain about her boss for 3 hours straight, so therefore she should see my value.
And that is exactly where the male logic crashes, according to Tyler.
The blue screen of death.
Pretty much. He insists that women simply do not view the world through this male logical lens. They experience the world through an emotional and intuitive lens. They live in a reactive state.
Okay, so let's look at what that means practically.
Well, a man acting purely on logic is predictable. He's stable. He is always there.
Right.
But emotional stability and logical linear progression completely lack the excitement, the tension, or the instability that actually engages a woman's emotions. To her, pure logic isn't romantic, it's just boring.
So if the logical nice guy approach is fundamentally anti-seductive, there has to be an operating system that actually works in this framework, right?
According to Tyler, yes.
If she isn't logically tallying up your good deeds to decide if she is attracted to you, what is her subconscious actually doing? And the author distills this down to 2 words, and this is really where his evolutionary psychology arguments take over.
He calls women survival creatures.
Survival creatures, that's intense.
It is. The text leans heavily into the idea that we are still walking around with primitive hardware. The author argues that everything a woman does is deeply rooted in an instinctual drive for survival that evolved on the savannah thousands of years ago.
So we're talking caveman days.
Basically, yeah. In that primitive environment, a bad mate choice didn't just mean a messy breakup and having to move out of an apartment. It meant literal death for her and her offspring.
Wow, okay, the stakes were a little higher.
Just a bit. So, subconsciously, her brain is constantly assessing the men around her. When she sits across from you at a modern coffee shop today, she isn't asking if you are a nice, equitable partner.
She's not looking at your spreadsheet of good deeds.
No. Her ancient hardware is asking, can he protect me? Does he have the strength and social dominance to navigate the world? Can he generate and hoard resources?
Which leads directly into the author's concept of sexual market value, or SMV. It's basically this ruthless scoring system of your overall desirability.
It factors in everything.
Yeah, it factors in your physical looks, your societal status, your unshakable confidence, your resources. It's a measure of who you are as a dominant force in society.
Right.
But I actually have to push back on Tyler here for a second, because he makes this categorical claim that just feels too broad.
Which one?
Well, he states that if you take a nun who spends her entire life in quiet devotion at a church, and you take a wild party girl who spends her weekends at clubs, they share the exact same biological attraction mechanisms.
Yeah, he does say that.
I mean, human beings are incredibly complex. Is he just oversimplifying psychology to sell a one-size-fits-all rule?
It's a fair question, and the author actually anticipates that exact pushback. His reasoning relies entirely on separating what he calls software from hardware.
Okay, so back to the computer analogy.
Exactly. All those variations we see in women, their religious beliefs, their career choices as lawyers or artists, their personal hobbies, their political leanings, he categorizes all of that as mere socialization. It's just software.
It's the surface-level programming installed by modern society. But the hardware underneath is totally untouched.
Exactly as the author frames it. A woman's fundamental biological drive doesn't change just because she learned how to use a smartphone or got a master's degree.
Right.
The author is absolutely adamant that this underlying hardware is hardwired for a concept called hypergamy.
Hypergamy. So that's the biological drive to always date across and up the social hierarchy, never down.
Right. According to the book, women are simply not attracted to their equals, and they're certainly not attracted to their inferiors.
So they always have to look up.
For a man to trigger genuine, primal desire, a woman must perceive his sexual market value as demonstrably higher than her own. She needs to feel like she is dating slightly out of her league, that she has secured a prize that other women would want.
That discrepancy in value is absolutely non-negotiable to him.
Completely
He
non-existent.
actually has a line in the book that sounds incredibly harsh, but he presents it as a pure biological law. He says, quote, "It is good when they never feel quite good enough for you."
Yeah, that's a tough one to read.
It really is, because he argues that if she perceives that your SMV is lower than hers, like maybe you are overly eager, or maybe you let her call all the shots, or you prioritize her above your own life purpose, her hypergamous nature immediately sounds an alarm.
Her survival instincts kick in.
Right. She judges you as a weak bet, and then she will start to disrespect you. She'll start ignoring your texts, or she will just straight up leave to find a stronger protector.
And this biological drive for survival and this hypergamous need for a superior partner really sets the stage for what Tyler calls truth number one.
Oh, boy.
Yeah. And for anyone reading this text, this is widely considered the most painful concept to accept. It completely shatters the modern romantic ideal.
It really does shatter it. Truth number one is this. Women cannot love men the same way men love women.
That's a heavy statement.
Very heavy. The book claims that men have this inherent desire to love idealistically. A man wants to love a woman simply for who she is, completely unconditionally. He wants that ride-or-die partner.
But Tyler argues that female love is strictly opportunistic.
Right. Let's unpack the psychological mechanism behind that claim. Why opportunistic?
Well, the author argues that because women are driven by that survival creature hardware we talked about, their love is inextricably tied to what the man provides.
And it is crucial to understand here that Tyler isn't just talking about financial gold digging.
No, not at all.
It is about emotional security, physical protection, societal status, and honestly, most importantly, how his presence makes her feel about her own survival odds.
Right. So to a woman operating on this primitive hardware, the idea of unconditional romantic love isn't just rare. It is a literal fantasy. It simply doesn't exist.
So her love is always conditional on your continuous ability to perform and meet those survival needs.
Exactly. He writes, quote, "Their love is more about them than it is about you."
It is a profoundly unsentimental view of relationships.
Very clinical.
Yeah. I mean, if you are listening to this right now, think about a confusing breakup you might have gone through in the past. You know, the kind where you felt like you gave absolutely everything.
You were supportive. You were always there.
Exactly. You sacrificed your own time, your energy, and it still somehow wasn't enough. And suddenly she just, quote unquote, lost feelings, or she said she needs space.
Right, which always feels so confusing.
It does. And Tyler's framework offers this very specific clinical lens to view that heartbreak. It basically attempts to reframe those past relationships not as your personal failure to be a good enough guy, but as a fundamental mismatch of biological expectations.
You expected idealistic, unconditional love because you were a good person.
Right. But she was hardwired for opportunistic love, and the moment your behavior signaled that you were no longer the highest value option, her biological love simply shut off. Like a light switch.
So if we follow the author's logic here, and we accept that love is entirely conditional and tied to maintaining a higher sexual market value, then everything hinges on behavior.
And every single thing.
How a man behaves on a daily, minute-by-minute basis dictates whether a woman's attraction stays on or turns off. And this introduces the core behavioral strategy of the text, which is just an absolute paradox to the logical brain.
The attraction paradox. This is truth number 2, and it completely breaks the male logic circuit. The truth is, with women, the more you put in, the less you get out.
It sounds so counterintuitive.
It does. But Tyler says if you are always available to her, if you show deep emotional investment early on, if you make her the absolute sole priority of your life, she does not feel cherished. She feels repulsed.
We really have to ask why here.
Yeah.
I mean, why would care, loyalty, and undivided attention register as repulsive to a woman?
Right. It doesn't make logical sense.
According to the author, it all comes back to how a woman's subconscious interprets that behavior through the lens of hypergamy. Imagine a man who cuts off all his other options, stops hanging out with his friends, and becomes completely wrapped up in a woman he just started dating.
His logic says, I am showing her she is special.
Exactly. But her primitive hardware sounds an alarm. Her subconscious looks at this guy who's made her the center of his universe and thinks, wait a minute.
If I am his only option, I must be the best he can do.
Right. And if I'm the best he can do, he must lack the ability to attract other women. If he can't attract other women, he must be low value.
Wow. So she views your profound loyalty not as a moral virtue, but as a glaring signal that you just lack options.
Exactly. The author summarizes this dynamic brilliantly.
Oh, yes. This quote is the absolute distillation of his behavioral advice. He says, quote, if you treat her like a celebrity, she will treat you like a fan.
That is such a vivid way to put it.
It's brutal, but vivid, because a celebrity doesn't sleep with a fan. I mean, they might take a picture with a fan, they might appreciate the fan's adulation, but they don't feel primal sexual desire for someone who is beneath them.
So to avoid becoming the fan, the author advises that a man must operate from a mindset of abundance. Ironically, to increase your value, you actually have to do less.
Less is more.
You have to be mysterious. You have to display indifference. The author advocates for maintaining scarcity. You don't text back immediately.
You leave her on read a little bit.
Right. You remain somewhat emotionally unavailable. You focus on your own life purpose way above the relationship.
And you do this not to be malicious or cruel, right?
No, not at all. You do it because in this framework, you must remain a challenge. The less freely you give your attention, the more valuable that attention becomes when you finally bestow it.
He actually provides a sort of translation guide in the book for how a woman interprets a man's actions. Like, you show endless kindness and clingy attachment. She translates that as you having absolutely no backbone.
Or you give her constant, unearned validation and compliments.
Complete turnoff. Because a truly high-value man wouldn't be so easily impressed. So how is a man actually supposed to act? Tyler says you have to be a permanent question mark.
A permanent question mark.
Yeah, you have to leave her slightly unsure of where she stands with you at all times.
Because in Tyler's view, absolute certainty kills desire. Women do not fall in love in the comfort of absolute predictable security.
No, they fall in love in the space of anxiety, tension, and uncertainty. They need the emotional roller coaster of wondering, does he really like me? Is he going to call? That tension is what creates the sexual polarity.
Okay, let's inject some serious logical pushback right here, drawing straight from the reality of how people actually interact in the real world.
Let's do it.
If this paradox is an absolute biological truth, if women genuinely desire the mysterious, indifferent, emotionally unavailable challenge, why do they constantly say the exact opposite?
It's a great contradiction.
Seriously. If you walk down the street right now and ask almost any woman what she wants in a partner, she will hand you a very specific list. She'll say, I want a nice guy, someone faithful, someone who brings me flowers, who is in touch with his emotions, and who puts me first.
Yep, that's the list.
So if Tyler is right, why does this massive societal contradiction even exist? The author attributes this entirely to the concept of covert communication. He argues that what women say out loud and what their biology actually responds to are two entirely different, often completely opposite things.
Because men communicate differently.
Right. Men are socialized to communicate directly. If a man wants a sandwich, he says, I want a sandwich. But the text claims women communicate covertly to avoid direct conflict, to avoid social shaming, or just to avoid being seen as the bad guy.
So you basically have to become a translator and read between the lines. To give some classic examples of this, like when a woman says, I don't want to ruin our friendship.
The author translates that directly. It does not mean she values the friendship too much to risk it. It means, I do not see you as a sexual prospect. Your SMV is too low.
Ouch.
Yeah. Or the classic, I'm not really looking for a relationship right now.
Oh, we've all heard that one.
Right. And according to the book, that simply translates to, I don't want a relationship with you.
But that still leaves the question of why they wouldn't just admit it. Like, why wouldn't women just say, actually, I am biologically hardwired to want a slightly aloof bad boy who ignores me sometimes? Why keep up the whole charade of wanting the nice guy?
It all comes down to one single word, leverage.
Leverage.
The author argues that admitting they're attracted to indifference and emotional unavailability would cost women all their power in the dating dynamic.
Oh, I see.
If they admitted the truth, men would stop showering them with free attention, free dinners, and constant validation. Women want men to keep working for their approval, to keep chasing them.
So admitting the underlying biological truth would completely undermine their ability to maintain the upper hand.
Exactly. So they tell society they want a good, safe man securing the resources and the societal approval, but their actions, who they actually sleep with, who they obsess over, who they let break their hearts, tell a completely different biological story.
Watch what they do, ignore what they say. That is his ultimate rule for communication.
A very common theme in this space.
But this requirement for a man to constantly maintain leverage and hold his high value, it just sounds like it never, ever stops. You might logically think, okay, I will just go out, grind for 10 years, get incredibly rich, build a massive company, and then I can finally relax, drop the act, and just be the nice, affectionate guy.
Nope.
But Tyler says external markers of success are not enough to save you.
This is a really critical point that many men misunderstand, according to the book. Men believe that high value is strictly about the tangible assets.
Mhm.
Money, a luxury sports car, a big house, a fancy title.
The stuff you can buy.
Exactly. But the author argues that those are just surface-level lures. Yes, wealth and status will absolutely get you in the door. They will get you the date.
Hmm.
But they do not sustain genuine primal desire.
He actually drops a whole list of high-profile guys to prove this point, which I found fascinating. Look at Jeff Bezos, Brad Pitt, Leonardo DiCaprio, Tom Cruise.
The literal top of the food chain.
Right. These are men with virtually unlimited financial resources and absolute top-tier global societal status. And yet, they get dumped, they go through brutal divorces, or they get cheated on. Why?
Because, according to Tyler, you cannot outsource your behavioral masculinity to your bank account.
That's a great line.
The moment a man, even a billionaire with a private jet, starts acting weak in the relationship, the moment he validates her too much, becomes clingy, capitulates to her frame, and loses that internal behavioral strength, the game is lost.
His money cannot overwrite her biological disgust at his weak behavior.
It really emphasizes the author's core belief that a woman's attraction is not a one-time achievement. It is a constant, ongoing subconscious assessment.
It never ends.
The game doesn't stop when you put a ring on her finger. You can never truly let your guard down because her hypergamy is always running in the background, constantly looking for a reason to judge you as a weak bet for her ongoing survival.
Honestly, it is genuinely exhausting just thinking about living like that.
It's a lot of work.
It is. So let's zoom out and just kind of summarize this journey through Tyler's female nature. The author is essentially handing men this highly specific, totally unromantic, and frankly brutal roadmap.
Very brutal.
He views dating and relationships not as this beautiful partnership of equals building a life together, but as a ruthless, biologically driven marketplace.
A literal market.
And in this market, your male logic, your desire to show earnest effort and get genuine love in return is an active liability. It will get you crushed. The only way to win, in his eyes, is to maintain a constant discrepancy in value, to position yourself as the prize, and to never, ever surrender your leverage by caring more than she does.
It is a paradigm built entirely on raw power dynamics and ancient evolutionary survival mechanisms. It completely rejects the modern societal ideals of equality, transparency, and unconditional affection in romantic relationships.
Which brings us to a massive, looming question. If we were to accept the author's premise as absolute reality that relationships are nothing more than a perpetual game of leverage, just playing biological chess and constantly ensuring she feels you are slightly out of her league, how does anyone ever experience genuine vulnerability?
That's the real question, isn't it?
It is. If you have to hide your true care just to keep her attraction, are you ever really running the same software, or are you just forever playing a rigged game on incompatible consoles?
And that leads to an even more provocative thought when you look at the implications of this text. If this biological chess match is the inescapable, absolute reality of human nature, how on earth are we supposed to advise the next generation?
Wow. Yeah.
When it comes time to teach our sons and daughters about love as they enter the dating market, what do we tell them? Do we teach them to be loving, trusting partners, knowing it might get them crushed? Or do we hand them Tyler's playbook, essentially raising them to fight a lifelong Cold War of biological leverage against the exact people they are supposed to love?
Are we raising partners, or are we training combatants for a marketplace that never sleeps? That is a deeply unsettling question to consider, and definitely something for you to mull over as you look at the relationships around you. Until next time.